mean, it's been difficult for everybody. God bless you. I know it's been a hard year. I've found it really tough. But I'm not 17. I'm not having my 17th year and all that. The amazing time that was, and the 18s and 19s, and going to college and starting off on relationships and all that wonderful stuff you do in your teens. And, you know, it's tough for these kids. Anyway, the government have announced £950 million of extra funding for schools to help them catch up on their education. But not everyone is sure that they've got that approach right. Doncaster-based Frederika Roberts is from the Education Wellbeing Collective. Frederika, good morning.
Good morning, Toby. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Now, you've written to the Education Secretary saying that the priority should be giving space to reconnect with friends and play out rather than catching up with academic work. What's your thinking behind it?
Yes, well, the thinking was when we initially started hearing about catch-up lessons over the summer, and we became very concerned because, of course, there is no doubt that there has been, a lot of disruption to education. We're not saying that the academic stuff doesn't matter, but all the research shows that in order for children to learn, to be in the best place to learn, they actually need to be mentally well. They need to be emotionally well. And actually, they have missed out on so much time with their friends over this time because, yes, they've been at home learning, etc., for much of the year, but actually they haven't been able to play out with their friends, or, you're talking there about relationships and teenagers, they haven't been able to hang out with their friends in the way that you would expect to at that age. And to actually take that away from them over the summer is not really going to set them up for a great academic year going back in September. And then following on from that, there's been the announcement of the behaviour hubs, and very concerning as far as we're concerned at the Education Wellbeing Collective, talk about the greatness of silent corridors, etc. So, when they are in school, yes, they need to be working when they're in lessons. Yes, they do have some catch up to do. But when they're not in lessons, let them interact with their friends. Let them build their relationships, because actually relationships are one of the absolute foundational essentials to well-being and mental health. And to deprive them of that is really dangerous. And I know the government has invested a lot. There's been a lot of initiatives to support mental health, but those initiatives are at odds with these kind of reports about academic catch-up lessons over the summer and silent corridors that prevent the opportunity to mix and connect with others when they're not in lessons. And that's what we're concerned about.
Who's expected to deliver the education?
In the summer?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, isn't it, Toby? Because that's the other side of this. Now, we wrote this from the perspective of, the mental health of the children and teenagers, but actually there is the whole school well-being issue here, and teachers have been absolutely overstretched.
Well, yeah, they've not.
They have
not like they've had time off.
Teaching. Exactly. They haven't had time off. They've actually had to adapt very quickly, as we all have, of course, but they've had to carry on delivering lessons, sometimes remotely and in school at the same time. They've carried on going to school despite huge risks to their own health as well. And they've kept going. And who, as you say, who would deliver these lessons over the summer? The teachers need a break too, and not just teachers, but all school staff need a break too, so that everybody can go back in September refreshed and ready to actually learn and carry on with the academic curriculum. And I fear, and I'm not alone, hence this collective letter, that if they start really putting pressure on the system over the summer, then everybody's going to suffer in the longer term as well.
Now, we spoke to the Department for Education. They said that schools can use this extra funding, the funding itself, to get help with kids' mental health and well-being. They also say they're giving extra funding to the NHS to help with mental health. They've got the Mental Health and Education Action Group to specifically look at how to support kids' well-being as they return to schools. I can say, can I? Yes, I can. From my personal point of view, our kids' school have been very supportive of certain issues that my youngest has found very difficult. And when I say very supportive, I mean actually above and beyond. I mean, they've been brilliant. So some schools are taking it very seriously, aren't they?
Absolutely. And within the Education Wellbeing Collective, we have teachers, head teachers, school wellbeing specialists that work in schools. We have school safeguarding specialists. So, we're not sitting on the outside of education looking in and saying they're doing something wrong. On the contrary, we are a collective of people who work within education, who work with teachers. There are many teachers amongst us. And what we're trying to actually do is to support those schools to do what they're doing so well, but it feels they're doing it. It feels frankly like a lot of the time when it comes to well-being, schools are pushing treacle uphill. And the pandemic has actually given us, if I may say so, and I don't mean it trivially, but an opportunity actually to look at mental health and well-being in a different light, to actually look at how important it is. And so many schools are really working hard on this. But despite government initiatives, despite the funding, etc., it just feels that they're saying one thing, they're saying they're encouraging it, but then everything they're putting in place is not actually really, it's at odds. If you're saying you want to support mental health, but then you're saying you have to bring everybody back over the summer to catch up on an academic curriculum, that is at odds with each other, and that's what we're concerned about. And I'm glad you mentioned actually the Mental Health in Education Action Group, because we've got Dr. Alex George on there, who's been very vocal about mental health because of his own family's history, and it's great to have somebody like that who has a voice, who has a platform to actually talk about mental health. But as far as I can see, the rest of the action group is all government ministers, and no disrespect to any of them, but they're not necessarily experts in either education or well-being and mental health. So actually, if they're going to have an action group like that, why not bring more people in from education, more people in who have expertise in mental health, to at the very least consult, bring a variety of people into this group to consult. Other than announcing that they've launched this group, that they've not actually put a call out, as far as I'm aware, to bring external experts that are not from the government in there. And this is what they should be doing. They should be listening to educators. They should be listening to wellbeing experts to actually talk about how we can really truly support schools. And that's what we're asking for, really. And our letter says, we would really welcome the opportunity to talk to Mr. Williamson and advise him, support him in supporting schools. And we'd love to help out the action group as well.
That's interesting, Frederika, because I wonder what you'd expect to get from him, because these kind of stories are dead easy for me, because I listen to you and then I think, oh, right, well, I see why they've done this. So then I get them on and I go, why have you done this? But actually, let's look at it from his point of view. Gavin Williamson doesn't think he's doing a bad job here, does he? He would say he's got the kids' best interests at heart. They've missed out on all this education. He wants them to get their education. We know that education is good. This isn't a good versus evil thing, is it? He doesn't think he's doing anything wrong here, does he?
Well, I mean, I don't know what Mr. Williamson thinks.
Well, if he would do that, then what could his motivation be to do something nasty? I mean, he would imagine he's doing the right thing.
I'm not saying
here.
that he is, am I? Well, all the more reason, and our letter is in no way negative or aggressive. We're asking to have the opportunity to speak to him and to support and advise him in what he's trying to do. I have no reason to believe either that he has anything other than good intentions in trying to support schools. But that's why bringing in expertise is so valuable. When it comes to dealing with COVID, the government brings in scientists to advise. So when it comes to mental health and education and children's well-being, and not just children's well-being, but the well-being of everybody in school communities, then it would only make sense, surely, to bring in experts from the field to actually support. And if you take, for example, us at the Education Wellbeing Collective, and as a collective, we're all volunteers. We all have jobs, either in schools or working self-employed or running businesses that support schools. But we all come together, and we have been doing since last year, to support education and to find ways to do that. And amongst us, we have collective expertise in teaching, in school leadership, in well-being in a wider sense, organizational well-being, in safeguarding, in behavior as well. So all of us together have an awful lot of expertise that we can offer. And what we're saying is, bring people like us in, talk to us, so that we can actually tell you what it's like from the inside, tell you what's needed, and consult with people like us so that we can actually support him in doing what he's trying to do, because nobody should be trying to do their job in the dark without information, and we're trying to help him with that information.
Frederika, thank you very much indeed. Frederika Roberts there from the Education Wellbeing Collective.